Good morning to all of you in the Devil Dog Day Trade community. If this is the first time you are joining us, my name is Michael, and I'll be taking us through our day trading setup process for today, December 27th, 2021. A special welcome to all of you who have served or are serving in the armed forces, and of course, an even more special welcome to all of my fellow Marines out there. Semper Fi, Devil Dogs. Okay, one other special thing about today, if my mom's watching, happy birthday, Mom. Hope you have a really great day over in Dubai. And make sure I will give you a call later on. Just as a note, we do have information presented in a lot of different ways here. So even though you may be new to this, don't worry. The information presented here should make sense to you at some level. If it doesn't, please make sure that you let us know in the chat or leave us a comment if you're watching the video later. We want to make sure that you do understand so that you can take full advantage of what we're doing here. This is a community and we're in this together, so we want to make sure that everyone feels like they are a part of that and are learning along with the rest of us here. All right, let's take a quick look at what's happened in the last 24 hours and then what is going to happen in the next 24 hours. And to do that, we jump over to our Forex factory page. Nothing big over the last 24 hours at all. Very, very light activity, specifically over the holiday weekend. We typically don't see anything there. And as we saw, not any significant moves when the markets opened again last night, at least for the futures ones. Looking at the day today, and then just real quick, I'll scroll down through everything going on for the rest of the week. As you can see here, very, very light activity for events, and in particular, nothing that is of significant impact to the markets overall. So while we will take a look at this every day, just in case something else gets scheduled, just note this week is typically a very, very light one. So not a lot of stuff that we have to worry about today. Let's flip back over to and start looking at our correlation markets. We'll start with the DAX first. And because it's Monday, we do, for the most part, take a look at all of our weekly charts as well, just to, again, get overall context for where we sit in the big picture of things. And I just remember for the DAX, we are coming up out of this weekly zone right here. You saw we came in here originally, had a pretty good solid move out, and now that we've come back down into it again, the move out does seem to have even a little bit more strength considering what's happening with the U.S. markets and also just with the overall time of year where we would typically expect some sort of a short-term rally between this week and the end of next week in January. So this is not surprising to us at all. Taking a look just real quick on the daily chart here, nothing else has been created that we are interested in. And again, just looking down through our other charts, again, I won't zoom into them unless we find something interesting, and nothing in here really. It's not creating any additional demand zones, so nothing that we've got to really use to point to additional strength here, but certainly not no supply zones that we need to worry about either. So you can definitely consider this market to be just on the move up along with the rest of them. Moving over to TradeStation platform. We'll start with the dollar again. And again, just to set overall context on our weekly chart here. Remember, we were looking at this consolidation area here, and typically speaking, what happens with these consolidation areas is once you break through them, price moves in one direction or the other in a fairly strong manner. It has not done so yet. So just an interesting thing to note here that this consolidation area did not end up giving us any good solid movement. So we are still waiting to see what the overall move out of this area is going to be for the dollar. On our daily chart, we still nothing new here at all. And again, we're just creating a whole bunch of white space right here. We've got to get through this, right? Either above or below. We've got a couple of areas below that we're looking at, but nothing really above until we get up into that $99 range. So, nothing on the 240-minute chart either. Got a couple of areas here on our 60-minute chart that we'll look at again. And as you can see, the one that we were looking at yesterday here, this one did come in, came in a couple of times here, did not quite hit our overall target from here though. And even though it had expected a little bit more strength once we broke this downtrend line here, we didn't get it. And so price did come back down through here and just left us with, if you were taking this as a trade, which we don't trade the dollar here, but if you were, this would have just been a break-even trade over here. On this lower area here, we'll just again take a look at this, just kind of refresh our memory here. This first zone here did not work at all. The second zone worked out very, very well, and it continues to hold as a kind of a support area, and price has just not come back down through here yet. As you can see, price is still moving back up again, and then we do have a little bit of an area right here where we've got another supply zone that we've created. We're interested in this area just because as you look left, you can see price changed here quite a few times now. And so this is a potential good area. We would look for confirmation on some of our other currencies, particularly the euro, to see if there's a demand zone in that same area. That would give us additional confirmation that this area is going to work for us. Nothing else we'll look at on the dollar. So moving over to the VIX for another look into, once again, a correlation market here. Nothing else has happened on any of the charts, the higher time frame charts. The only thing that we're showing any activity at all on is our 60-minute chart. So we'll just bring that up here, and you can see these areas that we had drawn that were demand zones here just didn't hold at all. It was just too much strength in the overall index markets, and so we just pushed right straight down through these things. We did have this pop up here a little bit when the markets opened on Sunday night, last night. But again, we're not creating any additional zones here that we can really use to understand where this market is going. Just know that we are still, down towards the bottom of it, which is where we'd expect to be, given where the major index markets are at right now. But nothing else here that's going to give us any indication of where prices is going to go, probably in the next day or two here. All right, let's look at the Nikkei market. Again, we do trade this one. However, it's a really good correlation market as they've been open all night. And so we can get a good idea of where, based on its performance, where the U.S. markets may open. Again, just on Mondays here, we'll set big picture context on the weekly chart. And we're still coming up out of this area down here at about the 27,000 area. But again, we're basically just creating a whole bunch of long-term white space right here. We've got to get either up past here, which again, this will be all-time highs, so we won't have any supply zones there. But down below is where we would look to get in. Again, this first area here that we've got marked is just an area of interest with the dashed lines. It may it may end up working again. It seems to be a very strong area, but the one right below it down here at 25,700, a very, very strong zone that we would look to take as part of a much bigger picture move back up again if price drops down there for us. Daily chart, you can see here we're just still bouncing around in that same area, so nothing new to look at there. Nothing else on the 240-minute chart either, so let's look at our 60-minute. That's where we seem to be getting most of our movement out of the past couple of days. We still have this zone here up at 29,000. However, it is going to be a counter trend trade by the time price gets up here. Counter trend trades on indexes are very, very unlikely to succeed. So I would just be very cautious with that one. Treat this more as price is going to take a little bit to get through here, but it's not going to change the overall trend or the longer term direction of where this is going. All right, that's it for the Nikkei. Before we get into Forex, we'll take a look at our 4 U.S. index markets, and we are, potentially going to be setting new all-time highs soon. We'll start here on the weekly chart. You can see right here, right, our actual. Just pull up a actual all-time high, right? Is right around that 47.42 area. I'll get the exact number for us. 47.40.5. sorry, 4743.25 is the actual all-time high. So we're very much approaching that. And the only thing that we're going to be interested in looking at on these higher time frame charts is as price continues to come up to this area, you do look down on our RSI charts, and you can see here you've got a little bit of negative divergence there, which could indicate a potential correction coming up. But that's it. There aren't any zones that we're going to try and trade. We're not going to try and take any long time shorts here. We'll just note that so that we understand if price does correct, that could be a driver as to why. Looking at our daily chart now, we have got basically the same overall view, right? We're create a little bit of white space here. We got to get either above it or below it before we take any longer term trades. As price continues to come up here, again, we would be looking for any negative divergence on our RSI chart, again, just to give us an indication of where a price may go, but not to actually trade it. And again, we are still waiting for price to come down into this 44.75 area. That will be a great place to get back on a much longer move back up again. On a 240-minute chart on ES, we've got a couple of areas here that we're interested in now. We're starting to create some additional demand zones, which is always a good thing when we believe that the market is going up. And we've got this area right here, and I will say this is not as strong of an area as I would like, because we looked left. We don't really see any good indications that price movement has changed a lot in that area. However, it's a zone, so we would look for just other corresponding zones on some of our other index markets to get a confirmation that price may actually change there. Looking at our 60-minute chart, though, we do see, these supply zones that were created, and this one did work as a quick retracement. And as you can see, as price comes back up in here, once that trend has changed, these supply zones in your index markets do not work, and we don't expect them to either. So that is working as intended and as we expected it would. That's why we don't take those trades without additional significant confirmations there. I'm not seeing anything down here lower and to the left, though, where we're interested in getting back on here. So we're probably going to have to wait for either new zones to be created this week or potentially that corrective action coming back and getting back in on that daily chart, the daily demand zone down there. So we've got this zone here in the 15-minute chart, and again, just to run you over to it so we can take a look at it, right? It's a good solid zone. It worked as a very quick retracement back on, let's see, when was this? On the 16th. Left it open here just because we were just looking at potentially at a trend change where we could take advantage of this. However, you notice this is a counter trend change, and even though you did see a price come out of it here a little bit, again, as expected, I would not expect this to actually be a working trade. So again, just note this area, price may struggle to get through it, but it definitely will. This is not going to change your overall trend here. And as I'm looking down and left, again, not seeing a whole lot to be interested in and taking these back up again. So we're going to have to be cautious with our index markets today. Again, unless we can find other zones on the other markets that we can correlate with these ones. In that case, we could potentially take some confirmation trades. All right, let's move over to NQ. We've got a little bit more volatility here, a little bit more movement, so maybe some additional options. Again, on our weekly chart, you can see we're coming back up from this weekly area that we had defined, even though we never hit it yet. And we need price to get either above it or come down and hit this one below it before we're looking to take any trades here. On a daily chart, we are still coming up out of this daily zone that's worked 2 times for us now. And as you can see, looking up and left, there's nothing here that we're treating as supply zones. So we're certainly not going to short any of these markets for long-term trades. And then looking down and left too, we don't have anything until we get that back below where the price dropped a few days ago. So again, no real long-term good trade setups on the index markets at this point. We've still got the purple line that you see here. This is the line that needs to break before we can get a true intermediate trend time frame trend change here. And we do have this same area on the NQ 240-minute chart that we had on the ES. So that's another potential indication that this zone may actually work. So we'll watch that. If price comes into these areas at the same time on both markets, that would be a good indication to take a confirmation trade out of there. Again, I would treat that as a day trade only, not looking for any long-term movements there. On our 60-minute chart, we've got nothing being created down and left, right? So no additional demand zones that we're interested in getting into. And of course, we're not going to be taking any counter trend trades here on these lower time frames on the on an index market. So nothing really to do here. A 15-minute chart just to see what we've got here. We've got some areas that we had marked as areas of interest, but were ended up being like this one, this first one right here, as a counter trend trade. And as you can see, I'll zoom in on it, right? It did. You can see how it worked, right? Price came up into it, but didn't go anywhere. Didn't actually change the trend, which is exactly what we would expect to happen on a counter trend trade on an index market. And we're seeing that happen, over and over again here. Another area of interest right above, and price came up into it, dropped a little bit, but then eventually went back up through it. Same thing with this area above as well. We'll just change this because it's a counter trend trade now. This will change this back to a dashed line because we know we're not interested in taking trades there. As I'm looking down and left, the only area of any interest at all that I see is this one right here. Good solid zone structure. It's a US market open zone, so a little bit stronger. But if I look left from here, I'm not seeing anything that makes me think this particular zone is going to have a lot of strength in it. So we'll just monitor this area. And again, if we can get some other indicator during the day of why this one would be a good zone to take, then we'll update the trading plan accordingly. All right, RTY. Remember, RTY is a significantly different picture than the other major markets are, right? There's a lot more weakness here than the other ones. We actually dipped almost down below this whole area of support here, but there's no zones that we've got here on a weekly chart until we get all the way down into the 1900 area. So again, just helping set context for where we're at in the big picture. We get to our daily zones, and you can see here completely as expected. While we did have price retrace up into this area, it didn't break this lower purple line right here that we had set, that we needed it to break in order for us to take a longer term trade there. And price came down and has now moved back up through this first area and coming up in the second area. Same thing here. There isn't any additional indicators that make us think that these shorts are going to work here. We really needed this line taken out to prove that we were in a longer term downtrend area. And nothing on a 240-minute chart. Let's look at 60, since that seems to be the most active one for the indexes today. And as you can see, this area right here, same thing, right? Price came up into it, dropped a little bit out of it, but that's it. And again, we didn't expect any long-term movements there. So again, all of those supply zones, as the markets move back up now, are working as we expected them to. Nothing else on a 60-minute chart, though, that we can make use of today. Just quick check of our 15-minute chart, and I can just tell you, just real quick, looking down and left on this one, there's anything to point out. So we'll continue to move on. YM, the Dow, Nothing different on a weekly chart, so I won't even bother with that. But just because context really is set on the daily chart for this one, and as you can see here, right, price came into this daily zone that we had marked, and even though it wasn't an automatic trade one, you do see it's working fairly well. As I'm looking up and left, I'm not seeing anything that's going to stop it either at this point until we get above previous highs. 240-minute chart. We're looking at this one just because we had that area of interest on some of the other index markets, and we've got the same one here. So again, the only way I would take any of these is if we had price come into two or more of them at the same time, either today or tomorrow. All right, 60-minute chart, and we have, all of these same areas on the 60-minute that we had on, especially the ES. As you can see, price in some cases struggled a little bit getting through them, but in the end, counter trend trade on an index market, just not a high probability area. And as I'm looking down and left, I'm not seeing anything of interest that we want to take advantage of. 15-minute chart. We had these previously used zones right here. Were really good retracements when we were making that big move down. We're looking for the kind of the opposite thing moving up now, looking for 15-minute zones where we can take advantage of those quick retracements to keep in this overall move up. And I'm looking down and left here, and there isn't anything that I can see there. So just a little bit of a struggle today, right? Nothing that's jumping out at us right away. That's okay. We don't have to make a trade every single day, right? Be patient. Sometimes the most important thing is to know when not to trade, which would be days like today where you're trying to force something and you feel like you need to make a trade, and the reality is you shouldn't. I had other people tell me, hey, find a way to sit on your hands, or go out and mow the lawn or something like that, or just find something else to do on days like this, so you're not just sitting at your keyboard and trying to force something to work for you. All right, let's switch over and take a look at a bunch of our Forex markets now, and then after that, we'll look at a couple of crypto trades too for the day. So looking at our Euro USD, it's again just the opposite market that we looked at with the dollar, so don't have to set context with it. I just want to point out real quick our 60-minute chart. This was the area that was the opposing zone on that 60-minute demand in the dollar, and as you can see here, it failed. And so the trade that I had in on this last week was a loss as well here. So it did not line up, and actually ended up not working out for us. And so we now have we're creating again this kind of white space area that you see here, and I'll just draw this out, right? I mean, until this changes. Right, there is just nothing to do, right? There's no trades to be taken in this area here. So we need to get above or below this white space area here. Once we do that, then the probability increases significantly for how we can take a trade and actually make it work out for us. So again, we're really just gonna sit on this. We've got a good area down here on the 15-minute chart. Actually, draw this one out because this is the more time we spend in this white space, the higher probability something like this has, as long as we don't change trend direction here. But if I'm looking up and left, there's nothing that I've got that's above this that I think is interesting enough to spend any time on. So let's flip over to USD JPY. We've got some pretty significant strong movement here. And since this one is not responding quite as evenly to the dollar as you would expect, it's a little more strength than the dollar does right now. I just take a look at weekly context. We're now moving up through the top part of this white space area. Once we get above it, that's where we can start seeing some bigger moves if there's any other zones, like maybe a daily or a 240 that we would take coming down out of here. certainly nothing on the weekly chart that we're interested in. So on daily chart, we don't have anything drawn at all up above. We were more looking for price to come back down into this 111 area, and where we could take advantage of this really good solid zone structure down here. We've got this kind of interesting stair step look right now here, where you've got a couple of rally forming. Obviously this last candle here has to continue up and complete the leg out candle before this area here becomes a zone. But you've got this one right here. Look left, right. It took out this pivot high. So if you get a quick retracement into here, certainly would be a good place to potentially jump back in on this overall long position here. So some good potentially on a daily chart for our USD JPY. 240 area, we had this previously used area that's now gone completely through. And then we had this other area down here that we just didn't think was very strong. Didn't have enough indicators that stated it was going to be an area that was going to respond this well. And so the only potential indication we had here was that we did have some negative divergence on our RSI meter, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't strong enough for me to really look at this and go, yeah, this zone is actually going to work. And clearly it has now. And as we look up and left, or sorry, from current price right here, like down and left, creating any new demand zones that we can take advantage of. And the only thing that we've got right here is one that's already been used. But this is showing that there is some additional strength in this market overall. So again, definitely biased towards longs here. So we look for just other areas to get in on long positions. So going to our 60-minute chart, again, looking for those retracements back down into additional demand zones. As I'm looking down and left here, I've got a little area right here that we'd be interested in. And that is really it. We're not really being given a whole lot of options to get back in on this longer term, move up right here. On a 15-minute chart, looking down and left, there is nothing at all that is jumping out that says this is where we should get back in on this. So we're probably stuck with that little bit of a bigger retracement back into that daily area, or you've got the one on the 60-minute zone as well. And just want to take a quick look at 114, 144 is the daily zone. 114. So these zones are actually in the same place, so that's another really good indication that this area is going to work when there's multiple zones and multiple time frames on them. All right, let's take a look at Aussie US dollar. Big picture here on the weekly chart. We're in this, starting a new weekly trend down now. You can see we've got two lower highs, and now we've got 1, 2, 3 lower lows. So we're in a solid downtrend on the weekly chart. So for higher time frame trades, we would definitely be biased to shorts. And looking at our daily chart here, we did see we came up through this first one that did not work. So delete that one out. We've got a couple of other areas here that, like this one right here that we're looking at, really this quick retracement already came back up in here and used this zone. So, you would need another really good solid confirmation before we took anything else out of here. Now, if you get like good negative divergence on RSI or like a solid daily zone in the dollar, which we don't have in the same area, those would be other ways to potentially take this, but I would be cautious of this one because the retracement worked out beautifully. It just remains to be seen how much additional imbalance is in here. Remember that we are in an overall downtrend on the weekly chart here, so that gives a little bit of additional odds enhancement that a zone like this may work more than once. All right, to 240-minute chart, nothing there. You can see until we get way down into the 0.0 or 0.706 area. So that won't happen in the next day or two. Let's look at our 60-minute chart. We did have this area of interest. Again, this was only an area of interest because it was a counter trend trade, so we didn't believe it was going to work, even though the structure was there. And sure enough, right, nothing happened. It did not work at all. On a 60-minute chart, though, as you can see here, let me just zoom back out again. We are in a uptrend for this short retracement. So we can take, long positions here as long as they're not, very long-term ones. And so we'll look and see if there's any other places to get back on here. Again, just keep in mind, we are coming back up to that daily zone. So once you get into the area, I certainly wouldn't take any longs coming out of there. Potentially a quick retracement into this area right here would be a place to take a shorter term day trade. And you've got a picture perfect zone right here that is actually taken out this pivot low to your left. So, and all this area here is protected to the left as well. So you may be getting this downtrend change right in this area right here. I would probably we'll look down on the 60 or 15-minute chart real quick and see if we can see any other indicators that either one of these zones here, let's just 0.722. So let's just look at that right now, since we're fast approaching this area. 0.722. Let me just zoom in on this. And interestingly enough, we are in another picture perfect zone embedded in 15-minute area from that 60-minute one, 0.22, and it's all in this area right here. So yes, actually, I would say this area right here is probably a very high probability of a day trade. Let's go ahead and mark these areas up and we'll track those. All right. Let's go ahead and move on to British pound dollar, and we on a weekly chart here. Let's just big picture first. We are, very big picture. We are moving still down trend. All right, so we are definitely biased towards a downtrend. We had, just want to pop this area up here because this is a previously used zone, but it is showing some additional strength. So you've got this what I'll call a support area now, right? It was a demand zone before. You had the quick retracement in it here, which has obviously worked for weeks and weeks and weeks. So it's been used, but it's showing, obviously a lot of strength. And however, overall downtrend here, these would be places where you could certainly get into on a much bigger, longer term trade, continuing to track this market short. All right, so these same areas on a daily chart, we came very close to this first zone here a couple of times, but once we did get into it, it just blew right through it. So we'll be looking for the next higher up one, right? This, especially I think this does align with the weekly chart there. So if the daily and the weekly chart line up, very good probabilities of these working out for us. Go ahead and mark that up. close that out. All right, so on a daily, sorry, we just looked at daily. So we back on 240 in the area here. We've got this purple line down here, which is just showing us a good strong area of support. And as you can see, you know, prices come in here multiple times, and it cannot get through there, even though there's not a defined zone. As I'm looking up and left, I'm not seeing anything else that that is of interest to me besides those daily zones. So we won't spend any additional time there. On a 60-minute chart, for the last time that we looked at this last week, let's see what happened with this area right here, where we were in this overall downtrend, and we certainly thought that this would be a much stronger area, and it turns out it was not. Right, we still had that big corrective action up that killed this zone off here. Now that we are moving back up again, shorter time frames, we are in a bit of an uptrend in this corrective action, but I would still be very cautious of overall trend changes. If you look down here, you've actually got a really solid zone right in this area. But zooming out, right, if we come back down here, depending on how high up we get here, like we'd be looking again for that trend change. If we're still in a sideways or uptrend, then take this. If we're back in a downtrend again, though, just make sure that you account for that as a counter trend trade there. All right, 15-minute area. Let's just take a look at what we had drawn up last time. And zooming in on this, right, the first zone that hit, we came up, dropped a little bit out of it. So, you know, this would have been a good break-even trade here. Let's give a color blue. There we go. And then the second one looks like the stop was just a little bit too close on it, right? Because if the stop would have been up a little bit higher, right up above this other area here, we would have gotten a good solid trade out of this. So just, I'll note that as we track this, right, stop was put a little bit too close. And again, the reason why we track those is if you see that happen enough, then you know that that's the right time and way to change your rules for a particular symbol, if you're getting, you know, consistent behavior out of it. Just looking back where we're at right now, and look, you can see this right here, right? The perfect picture of white space where you've got just, you know, prices trading the last several days in a row in the same exact area. You really need price to come up or out, you know, down out of this before you're willing to take any trades here. So let me just get back here. As you zoom out of this, yeah, there isn't anything up or down that we're interested in on a shorter time frame perspective here. All right, let's move over to our Euro JPY now, and again, setting a big picture context on our weekly chart. We came very, very close to this weekly zone right here. Haven't quite gotten into it yet, but you know, prices bounced off of that fairly strongly already. So, hey, Rosemary, you can see that the gold sports sideways or not. Yeah, I'll take a look at that in just a second here for you. So Euro JPY, we got a little bit of strength coming up on this one. A daily chart, you can see here we got these same areas here in a daily that are embedded into that weekly zone. We really wanted price to come down into them. We didn't get it in there. Looking up and left here though, nothing I can see that's going to change the direction on a daily chart. And so if price does come back down here without changing trend though, these are very, very, very strong zones. Let's see here. Let's just take a look at our 240-minute area since I've got this noted here. Again, this is a area of interest, not a full zone just because of the structure of it. We are in a sideways trend. And we've got a little bit of negative divergence on our RSI. So we've got one confirmation that this area may continue to work. Let's drop down into our 60-minute chart to see if we've got additional confirmation here. And From an RSI perspective, we've got a little bit of negative divergence right here. Not enough where I think this is going to be a trend change or a longer term trade, but if you wanted to get on something a little bit smaller for a day trade in this area, you've got a couple of good indications that this area may work out. So just going to I'll take a quick look at gold here since we got a request for that. So we're looking at the futures now, a GC symbol. And on a weekly chart, right, always want to set our big picture context. We've just back and forth, right? There isn't anything solid here. You've got a good solid weekly zone down here below at 1631. Nothing up above on a higher time frame at this point. So it is still going sideways. And on a daily chart, we're still in this, in the almost the exact same picture, but it becomes a little bit more clear that you've got this zone up here at 1871 that's already been used. You've got the same thing down at 1630. And we need price to get, either back up above the 1885 or down here to the 1630. We're still going sideways on that, that time frame as well. Getting into some of our smaller ones, right? We'll jump down into a 60-minute, and you can see here we've come up to this 1816 area here 2 times and gotten pushed down from it very, very strongly. So if you wanted to lean any direction here, I would say shorts are probably still the way to go. But I did take this trade off for myself. I'm considering this area already used, but you could certainly get a shorter time frame, maybe a day trade or a couple of day trade time frame out of this area. And as I'm looking down and left on gold, I'm not seeing anything at all that's going to push it back up again within this same area right here. So yeah, for all intents and purposes, specifically on a long-term perspective, you've got, gold is going sideways, going down into the, down into the very lower time frames. And if you've watched this show at all, you know that I do struggle with trading gold at lower time frames, and this is exactly the reason why, right? You draw a zone like this up right here, and it looks solid zone. I even gave it a little bit of wiggle room coming down through, and as you can see, the price just still came down into it and just busted right straight through this zone right here. But the overall area worked very, very well. But again, we are, you've got overall uptrend on the shorter time frames. So if there's something like this you wanted to get into, again, from a smaller time frame perspective or a day trade, you've got another area right down here, which is of interest, but nothing up and left. And as you can see here, we've got, a lot of blank space to our left. So I wouldn't be trying to short this on a shorter time frame perspective right now. That's where we're at in gold. I'll take a look at a couple of other of our Forex markets, and then we'll jump into some crypto as well. So USD Canadian dollar, again, the larger time frame perspective on a weekly. We're trying very hard to break this downtrend and move back into an uptrend, and we cannot yet. So before you take any longer term trades on this currency, this line right here, a candle has to close above it before we confirm a trend change. If a candle doesn't close above it, then this is sideways, or we'll continue on our downtrend here. And no zones on a weekly chart that we're looking for. On a daily, we already had this line drawn, and as you can see, we had a wick poke above it, but that's it. So no candles have closed above it. So we are not in a confirmed uptrend yet. We are still in a sideways trend. However, sideways trends are still okay to take long positions in. So look for price comes back down into these two areas here. Could get a pretty significant move up and out of there. This 240-minute area is not working out for us either. I think we were looking for that full trend change before this one was going to become a completely active zone, even though price, you can see the price did close above this pivot high on a 240-minute chart. It didn't confirm it on our daily chart, which is where we get our trend information for a trade on a 240-minute area. So not a whole lot of surprise of why that one didn't work. As I'm looking down and left, I'm not seeing anything that's interesting to get into either. And then of course there isn't anything up and left as well. Just too much blank space to the left there. We wouldn't be taking any short-term trades here. On a 60-minute chart, we've got this same line drawn, right? If we needed price to come up above here on the daily chart before we confirmed this trend change, and sure enough, right, price just came up to the area and is now moving down again. As I'm looking down and left, the only thing that I've got here, you look at this structure right here, it looks really very solid one. Look left, we took out these pivot highs right here, and I don't, this shouldn't be a trend change by the time price gets down into here. So this 1.27354 area is one where you could certainly see a longer term trade working out of here again, unless we get a trend change by the time we get back down into this area. All right, looking at very, very short time frame, we are sideways trend on the 15-minute chart. Nothing up and left. Zoom on this area. So we got price coming down again. It's a little bit messy. I wouldn't put a whole lot of faith in something like this, but you've got a couple of solid structures here. If you take these are going to be very short-term day trades only. Get in them, get out, make a little bit of money, and then go look for your bigger, longer-term trades back up on the daily and weekly charts that we just looked at there. All right, do one more Forex, and we'll go look at a couple of cryptocurrencies. This is our Aussie CAD weekly. Came down very close to this zone in the weekly, and I'm now bouncing up from it. Nothing up and left that we're interested in, and we would need this line right here to break for us to confirm that we have changed trend on this. Otherwise, we are biased to the downside. Okay. Our daily chart is not showing up at all for this one. Let's move to the 240. Remember, we are biased to the downside. As you can you take a look at the RSI chart, right? As your prices come up here and gotten incrementally higher through this area right here, you can look down and you can see we've got negative divergence here. So not a surprise that we're getting a little bit of corrective action here. We did have a, this is a pretty long, it's a fairly long move back up again. So a correction at this point wouldn't be surprising at all. Nothing down and left that we're interested in, and on this chart, nothing up and left either. So on a 60-minute, looks like we've got one area here that we're interested in, and I would actually say no. So as I'm looking at this again, right, I drew this zone kind of far down in the overall structure. What it's, the full entire zone is this right here. And as you can see, price did come in and hit this and reacted to it very, very strongly. So I would consider this one here already used and just make a note that we missed the entry point on it. And then just as I'm looking up through here, right, you've got a couple of really good zone areas here. These are shorter term trend or trades, because, and this one has already been used right here, because we're at the very top of this bigger correction So I think it's, the next move down is going to be longer. So you'll just get some fairly short term day trades out of these two zones here. But again, yeah, don't hold on to them for very long. All right, 15-minute. So this area that we drew out last time that we looked at this 15-minute zone worked out very, very well for us. You had price come in a couple of times, but I mean, it's a very, very strong move out. So we're just marking this up so we know not to use it again. And prices just continue to move up. Now we've got this, looks like a little bit of a corrective action coming back down again. So I would be very cautious about taking any, close in long-term or long positions here. And as I'm looking up and left, there's nothing that's jumping out at me that says this is something that we should use to get back in on this short here. All right, let's take a look at some cryptocurrencies in the last few minutes that we have here. So flipping back over to TradingView, which is where we do all of our cryptocurrency charting at. So starting with Bitcoin, we did have that kind of magic number over the weekend where we broke 50,000 again. That seems to be just a kind of a psychological area within the overall community, I guess. Interesting enough, on the daily chart here, we have created an additional demand zone. So that's good. That just continues to show that we're in a bit of a longer term move up again here. And that on top of the fact that the 60-minute area did not work either. Right, this supply zone just completely got blown through. Again, when supply zones are being busted and demand zones are being created, that is the definition of a long-term up moving market. No additional zones here created at this point. And then as we look, looks like I have to do a little bit of cleanup on some of these zones here for our tracker. And this one here is did end up working out, a little bit, right? It was a good short-term move out of there, but again, nothing significant moving up. And I'm trying to find anything else that we could get into on a shorter time frame here on Bitcoin, and just nothing jumping out at us at all. Moving over to Ethereum, a little bit less of a move here, right? On a daily chart, we're still, they got this nice little consolidation area, not moving a whole lot here, so nothing to really look for at this point. On a 240-minute chart, all you see is that same area that was on Bitcoin. Did end up having, worked a little bit, in a little bit stronger manner here. So there's a little bit more buying or selling pressure here. And then you've got this area of interest, and I'll leave it just as an area of interest. I'm not sold on this as a solid zone yet, because you're going to be bouncing back and forth between these two areas. So no longer term trades here, but use this area if you can find something on like a 60 or a 15-minute demand zone down in this area here. Might be able to take a good confirmation trade out of there. All right, then just looking at some more shorter time frames, I don't see anything there that which was interested in. DOT is in a very, very strong move up now. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days. 7 days in a row, and nothing above that we can see that's going to stop us here. And as you can, then additional confirmation of this move up, right? The 240-minute zones that we had, each of one of them worked to slow the price moving through them, but didn't actually stop it. Right. Again, it was not unexpected at all. This one in here. This next one coming up, though, you're going to get a stronger move out of it. Again, remember we can't short these from the Coinbase app that we're using for our trading. We just use the supply zones as targets, or just areas where we know we can get back in on a longer term move up. So I would, if you're in this one right here and have some longer or some shorter term trades going on for DOT, this would probably be a good area to sell them, get out of the positions, and then get back in once price comes down out of this area. Okay, looking at shorter time frame areas here, and just nothing. Now, this 15-minute one here, and this is so note of caution for this one right here. It's a good solid area, but I would, if price hits that 240-minute area first and then comes down here, I wouldn't take this. If it comes down and hit this first and then moves up to that 240-minute area, should be a good solid day trade for us. All right, Dogecoin. Yeah, nothing big on the higher time frame areas here. Let me just expand our 15-minute chart to see what these areas were. Yeah, these, okay, so these are previous ones that still need to be tracked. Worked out very, very well for us if we could do short positions, but just to know that we had a good solid movement out of there. And you know, you really just got this, we're bouncing back and forth in this white space area now. We need to get out of it, even on a short time frame view, so we can actually make some additional trades here. AVAX, we came up and hit this daily area here, which we did feel was fairly strong, and as you can see, prices come out of it. Select the right chart here on our daily one. Prices come back out of it, but we're showing a little bit of strength, probably mostly because we've got strength in a lot of other cryptocurrencies. So it's not just a, this isn't just using the data for AVAX. It's probably being pulled up just in general here. Keep that in mind. And okay. Not sure how I got to this stock screener panel, honestly. Minimize, there we go. Okay. So on our 240-minute chart here, and then we'll look at this one and probably one more. As you can see, we had this area drawn here, area of interest, but not a solid zone. Price came up out of it, and then I'll keep tracking this just to see if we just got the stop area here wrong. Since it does look like we're maybe having a little bit of additional strength here. I may have just gotten that stop wrong. I'm not seeing anything on the lower time frames here that are of interest either. So move back over to Shiba currency, and as you can see, bigger picture move up from our daily zone that we drew out here last week. Let me just zoom in on this real quick, right? So came in, hit this area to the T, and moving back up again. And I've got nothing that I think is interesting enough that's going to stop it. So, and some additional areas of strength being created in our 240-minute chart and even in our 60-minute chart here as well. Bring up a couple of those. All right, so each time we've had one of these created, like this one here was a very quick retracement into it and worked. We had this picture perfect zone created right here, right, and this one is working out well for us. Yeah, nothing else here. I'd wait to see if price can come back down to this lower zone here. Take this one again, and then hold on to it for a while. There's nothing up and left though that I'm interested in stopping this movement up right here. All right, that's it for today. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you get notifications when we release new content and new videos. If this session was helpful for you, hit the like button. And of course, if you have any questions, leave us comments, and we'll make sure that we get answers back to you as quickly as we can. Have a happy and safe trading day, and we'll see you all again tomorrow at 8:15 Eastern Time.